Shalom, shalom. I want to start by giving all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Makakodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles, a great millstone to teach and rule well. Peace and salutations be to the hopeful elect. I am Brother Atazwa Mkabar coming at you with another lesson. Through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai. This is not really much of a lesson, but I wanted to get in on a testimony of mine for a dream I just woke up from about 2 hours ago. So I wanted to share this dream with you brethren and you Akim, and this truth and in this faith. So in the dream started off, the setting was in Jacob's trouble. And we were like, in the climax of things, where we were reaching the climax of things, all right? The climax is when Yahushua returns. But we were reaching that point. We were getting close to it. And in this time, I don't know if you guys ever seen the show Black Summer on Netflix, but it was literally like that. People were running around like chickens with their heads cut off, and people were getting robbed and killed and raped and murdered and used, in these days. But the hot topic in these days were the prophets. In this dream, in those days, the hot topic was the prophets. People sought the prophets for because they had bounties on their heads. So people sought the prophets to put them to death and gain the bounty, okay? Because these men had, millions of dollars or credits or whatever they're going by in those days. They had millions of it, placed upon their heads. And so you had people literally traveling from other countries. There were people traveling from other countries just to come to America and hunt down the prophets as if it was a sporting game. So, in that day, the prophets were, they're a rarity. So people hunted them down, and a lot of them were killed off. But people were hunting them down to get the bounties off the heads, and people were seeking them to, understand the times that they're in and to get insight on what's to come. Because everybody in this time knew that Yahushua was about to come back, because the world was in complete chaos. It was like the control and the order, all of it was lost. There was no more control over the people. And they were like, they were running themselves. Esau couldn't control them anymore. All Esau could do with the people was kill them. All Esau could give the people was death. So, in this time, and this dream started off with me being with two other brothers in the truth, because, we had, in the dream, we knew that we had brothers with us. In the beginning, we knew we had brothers with us, but they were killed off, and some were separated from us, due to being thrown into FEMA camps or into prisons or whatever it may have been. But a lot were killed off. And in this time, man, it wasn't a time where the time we were in, it wasn't a time where we could just, kick it back and relax. No, it wasn't like that at all. Okay. The two men that I was with, they were brothers that are part of my camp. The two men I was with, we were we were traveling. We were like pilgrims among the earth. Scripture says, be in those days, be even as pilgrims among the earth. So we were like pilgrims among the earth, man. We were, whenever there was commotion outside or rioting or whatever, we would try to slip through the crowd, get around and get out of there. But we'd have to, we'd have on hoodies and stuff like that. We were having things covering our heads, so our identities wouldn't be revealed, because these people basically memorized our faces because we were wanted. There was posters of us, they had our pictures up and stuff, and people knew what we looked like. So everybody wanted in on that money. Everybody wanted, to be wealthy or rich again. They wanted to feel some kind of comfort from money, from mammon. So they were literally hunting the prophets down. So in this day, in that day, we were in a house And what we do is we travel to a house, and we'd lodge there for one night, because we couldn't stay. We couldn't stay any longer, or we get, they'd find us and kill us. We'd lodge there for one night, and we wake up early in the morning and leave. We'd get back to traveling. So, and this time we woke up, and the two brothers that were with me, we woke up, and we felt something was off. So we were like, the brother that, that was over me, he was like, we're surrounded. And I'm like, no, it can't be, you gotta be kidding me, we couldn't, that day, man, there was no smiles, there was no giggles, there was no laughter, there was none of that. Scripture says there will be a crying for wine in the streets, and that's what it was. That's literally what it was. All right, as I said before, scriptures, you read them the wrong way, they could be under exaggerated, but these scriptures, they hit deep. The way it's said in the scriptures, it means it 10 times more, So you may think, oh, there's going to be a crying for wine in the streets. People are going to be sad, but, it's not going to be that bad. But when the scripture says there's going to be crying for wine in the streets, literally, it's, if it's written down in the book, it's got to be something huge, okay? It means it 10 times more than what it was, what it seems like. So there was no laughter in that day, no happiness. We were going through it. We were stressing. Our spirits felt sorely afflicted. We were always afflicted. So the brother told me, he said, hey, we're surrounded. I'm going to just say brother number 1, and then brother number 3. I was brother number 2. So brother number 1 told me, he was like, hey, we're surrounded. I was like, no, you got to be kidding me. We got up. We barely even spoke to each other in these days, man, because we felt like we were constantly being listened in on. Somebody was constantly listening in on us, or we felt like we'd be found if we spoke too much. So, we got up and we walked outside of the front of the house, and there were soldiers everywhere, all throughout the streets, had their guns locked in on the house. As soon as we walked out, we were just like, our jaws just dropped. We're like, no, automatically, panic started to course through our veins. We turned around, we ran back to the house and closed the door, and they started shooting the house down. And we were running. We ran to the back door. We got out the backyard and we hopped the gate, the backyard. We started running down the street to the backyard. And the soldiers were quick, man. They came through they flooded the house, came to the back quickly, and they were already on the streets. You seen soldiers kneeling down in the streets. And we're running down the street, which felt like forever, which felt like the longest street, man. We're running down that street, and it was me and the two brothers with me, and one of the brothers was behind us. And he was grunting, like he was grunting really badly, like he was running out of breath. He was, panting really badly. And then he was like, he was trying to speak, but he couldn't speak because he was out of breath. And, was out of breath so bad. But he was trying to, get our attention. He was, hey, he was panting. And it was a scary thing. Because while we're running, there's bullets flying right past our face. Scripture says, thou shalt escape by the skin of their teeth. You're going to escape by the skin of your teeth, man. So these bullets were passing us, and they were literally ripping through our shirts, our pants, but they were not touching our skin. They wouldn't touch our body. They were flying right by our cheeks, but it wouldn't touch us. It hit our clothes, but it never hit our bodies, so our clothes were torn. And the brother, he was behind us. He started to panic because he was out of breath. And right when I looked back to check on him to see if he was all right, as soon as I looked back at him, he tripped. And when he tripped, it felt like, what felt like forever, man. He tripped. He stuck his hand out to reach for me so I can grab his hand. And it felt like I was watching him fall in slow motion. And right when he was falling, the bullets just started pounding on the back of his body, on the back of his head, on the back of his back, the back of his legs. And then he fell to the floor, and you didn't have time. In that day, man, it was like you didn't have time to stop and to lament. You didn't have time to stop and to cry, or time to stop and to hold. and hug and pray for. You didn't have that kind of time, okay? All you had time for was to move. You only had time to move. So I saw him drop, and my heart just dropped with him, man. And I started crying. The brother with me started crying. Or crying, tears running off our face and flying behind us because we were running so fast. We were running for our lives. We couldn't stop. We saw him drop, and we just couldn't stop running. The things that you want to do, you couldn't do in that time. It was a time of pure sadness and fear and circumspection. Okay, so when we escaped, we reached the end of the street, and they were standing over him, mowing his body down. He was unrecognizable, mowing his body down with ARs. So we escaped, and we ended up running into this house. We ran into this house. Like, the dream, it felt like we were dwelling in this time for months upon months, or maybe even years. It felt like a long time we were living this way. So when we ran into the house, I don't know if it was right after we lost a brother, or if it was months later. But I remember going into this house, and it was like a Muslim or Arab guy, Ishmaelite, and he was really, he was really wealthy. He had food. He had the things that people desired. He had food. He had protection. He had a lot of men in there with guns and stuff. I don't know if he was a drug lord or what, but me and brother number one was the only brothers left. It was just me and him. And this was a time to be circumspect. You didn't have time, for anything else but circumspection and moving. All right. Scripture says, wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times. All you could do was be wise and have knowledge. You had to be wise of everything. You had to question everything. So him and I, we were sitting at the table, and the guy was telling us he had food laid out all over the table. He was telling us, he said, hey, I know y'all, man. I know y'all are the prophets that everybody's looking for. He said, I just want to know. I don't want to hurt you or anything. I just want to know what's coming. It's what he was saying. He said, I want to know what's coming. If you can tell me what's coming, if you can tell me when, excuse me, so lucky. He was saying, if you can tell me when the prophecies are going to unfold, what's the next prophecy, and when is the end, what day is the end, and stuff like that, you can have all this food on the table. Because, man, we didn't eat in days. We haven't eaten in days. And, he was trying to bribe us with food. But we were looking at that food like it was yuck, like it was gross. We were looking at the food like it was dead meat, Because in that day, like I said, you only had time to be circumspect and moving. Okay, so you couldn't lust anymore. You couldn't lust over food. It was just pure sadness. We were sad. The thoughts that were running through our heads were the faces of our brothers when they're fallen. Those are the only thoughts that were really running through our head, and how to survive the next, the next affliction. So we're sitting at this table, we're looking at the food, we're looking at the man, and he's asking us questions, and we're like, no, we don't know what you're talking about. We had quick, short answers, solid answers. Okay, it was always no. I don't know what you're talking about. No, we don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know. They got the wrong man, you got the wrong man, because you were circumspect in that time. You didn't know whether you reach into that turkey and it'd be a landmine in there. You didn't know if you touch that food, you touch a chicken, you can tell them the things that they want to hear. You touch that chicken, he's going to shoot your head off. All right, so we said no. We turned down the food. He was like, okay, maybe you don't want food, but how about my daughters? If I give you my daughters, can you tell me these prophecies? And I turned around, and he had his daughters lined up against the wall, and they were smiling, and they were waving, and they had head covers on, they had modest dresses on, and they were fair women. They were fair women. And we looked back at them, and we looked at them, and then we just looked away, and we're like, no, we don't know anything, okay? Because you couldn't lust. We just couldn't lust in that time. We were too sad. We were too afflicted. There was too much trouble in the flesh for you to say, it was too much trouble of the spirit for you to sit here and give time to the flesh. You couldn't look at the woman and say, wow, she's beautiful. You look at the woman and say, she's trouble. Okay, you look at the food and say, something's not right. All you could do is question things, man, because you were so terrified. Death was at every turn. It was always a trap laid out for us. So we had to be circumspect always. And we looked at the daughters, and we looked at his daughters, and we were like, nah, man, we don't know anything. I can't tell you what's coming because I don't know. That's all we were saying to him. He was like, all right, get them out. Let them go. Get them out. And he sent us about our way. We didn't accept any of his offerings or anything like that. He just sent us about our way. We knew that we were fine anyway because the Lord was protecting us always. So we were walking, in faith of the Lord. That is the only way we survived. That's why we had bullet holes in our shirts, but no bullet wounds to our bodies. So we left, and it could have been a space of another month or so, maybe weeks, maybe days, but we came into another house. And in this house, it was like abandoned. Like it was abandoned. We usually went into like abandoned houses and stuff like that. The last house we went into, the guy had inquired of us and he brought us in. So in this house, it's like the second place we went into in my dream that I recall. We were walking down the hallway, and it was like, it looked abandoned, burned down, stuff like that. There was a few fires ran through there, but people still like dwelled in there, So we had to be careful. It looked like a hotel / apartment type deal. We're walking down the hallway, and there's just a bunch of rooms in there. So there's this one room at the end of the hallway, and then there's a left turn leading, like the hallway leading to another side of the building. So at the end of the hallway, there's this room, and there's this woman standing outside the hallway. Or she's standing outside the door, and she had a bra on, she had panties on. And this time, man, you look at a woman like that, and this day, you're like, damn, who was that? Let me go talk to her. But in that day, we looked at her like she was deadly, like she was, a trap. Okay? And we were walking, and me and the brother, we didn't speak a single word to each other. All right? We didn't speak a single word. It's like we read each other's minds. We knew what was going on all the time because circumspection, okay? Scripture says to be circumspect. So we were circumspect, man. And we were looking. I looked at the woman, and then I looked behind her, and there was a man, like, peeking behind the door. You can barely see him. All I see was, like, his eyeballs just peeking behind the door and a little bit of his forehead. And I knew that it was a setup from there. And then as we were getting closer, he started coming out a little bit more, like ready to attack right after, we got to the woman. Okay, but if you're in the flesh in that day, you went up to the woman and be like, damn, you beautiful, what's your name? Man, when it came around the corner, came right from behind her and sliced your head off. All right? But we were approaching this woman, with completely calm minds. We knew what was going down. Like, all right, this is a trap, In our heads, it was like we were speaking to each other. We weren't exactly speaking to each other in our heads. It's just like we were already on point. We were like in sync because of how circumspect we were. So there was a dirty pillow on the floor. There was dirt. There was dolls on the floor. There were shoes on the floor. Like everything just looked abandoned. So I picked up the dirty pillow and I threw the pillow. And while the pillow was flying, I was running. And once the pillow landed, it hit the man in the face that was behind the woman. It hit the man in the face, and his entire body came out from behind the door, which he was now completely behind the woman. And right when he came out from behind the door, I ran into the woman and kicked her in the chest, and she flew into the man, and they both fell back. And then me and the brother started running down the left side of the hallway. We started hitting it for our lives. And the brother went into a room. He hid in that room. And then I was looking for a room. I couldn't find one at the moment because I was panicking. I was panting. And I was, adrenaline kicking in. And I was just looking, I was moving very fast at the moment. So I opened the door that he was in. He was like, I'm trying to hide. Close the door. So I was like, you didn't have time to say, well, I'm afraid. Let me hide with you. You didn't have that kind of time. You didn't have time to say, wait, but I'm scared too. Can we hide together? You didn't have that kind of time. All you had time to do was move and be circumspect. Okay? So I closed the door and I started running down to the other side of the building, down through the hallway. I'm looking for rooms to go into. I couldn't find any. So I finally found a room And right when I ran inside the room, at the corner of my eye, I seen a dark figure, in the hallway, standing in the hallway. And I knew it was somebody down there. It was like a hunter. I'm telling you, these people were literally hunting down these prophets, man. These people were everywhere. All right, they were setting up traps, all the time. There was always a trap everywhere you turn. So this man's in the hall, and I'm in the room. I'm looking for a place to hide, and I'm looking around fast, fast as hell. You know how you're looking left from right, left from right. That's what I was doing. And I ran to the closet, and I climbed the closet door. And I was at the top of the closet door, and it was, I was like, okay, maybe if he comes in, he won't see me at the top of the closet door. I can jump down on his head and bring him to the ground and then escape, But it wasn't working because the closet door was sturdy, it wasn't sturdy enough. It started wobbling and stuff, and then I ended up falling off of it to the floor. And I got up and I was like, okay, I just got to trust in the Lord, man. I can't hide. You can't hide in that room because I was cornered. There was no windows, nothing. I was cornered. If I hide in the room, he would come in, he would slay me. So I said, if I hide in here, he's going to slay me. But if I go out there, I have a chance of escaping. So right when I went out the door to escape, the man was right in front of me. I went outside the door. He was standing like right on the outside of the door, and he was to my left. I turned my head to the left. Right when he was about to grab me, he got yoked into the air. Like he was literally pulled into the air, and he was floating in the air. And I was looking at him, and he was like struggling to breathe. And he was like, please, I'm your brother. I'm trying to help you. I want to help you, But when I was looking at him, it was like something was gripping his neck, but you couldn't see it. It was invisible, but he had a grip on his neck. There was a grip on his neck, like something was standing there. It was like a great big man that was invisible standing there choking this man out because his feet weren't even on the floor anymore. He was literally floating in the air, getting choked out by something I couldn't see or he couldn't see. And what this would seem like was I was choking him out with telekinesis, but I really didn't lift a finger. Neither did I think about it. It just happened. I just looked at him and he was yoked into the air. He was being choked out and his feet were kicking in the air. And he was like, please, put me down. I want to help, And all I could do was look at him because I was in awe, I was like, whoa, like just looking, I'm like, whoa. My mouth was open and then, splat. Okay, his neck was squeezed to its death. And just went like it was crushed. His neck got crushed and then he fell to the floor. And then I looked down to the floor. I seen him on the floor. I looked down and my feet were above the floor. I was floating in the air. And I was like, whoa, I'm flying, I wasn't even, I couldn't even be surprised. I was just like, wow, I'm flying. Cool. Because in that time, there was so much sadness, so much death and pain all around you. Such a serious time, man. It was just, a very terrifying time. That's the time of Jacob's trouble, No time shall ever be like it. No time was ever like it. It was the worst time in the earth, okay? So I'm looking down at my feet, and I'm floating above the air, at least 2 feet above the floor. And I went to go help my brother that was hiding. To go help my other brother. I found him. When I found him, he met me in the hallway, in the middle of the hallway, and he was flying too. We were both hovering above the floor. And we seen each other hovering above the floor. You would think, hey, we got spiritual power, yeah, we made it, it was, you would think it would be like that, but it wasn't like that at all right? There was no happiness. We seen each other and we were just like, all right, where are we going next? And, we were just like, okay, let's just keep moving. We got to keep moving. We can't stop now. We got to keep moving or we're going to get caught, It wasn't a time to sit and rejoice. It wasn't a time, you didn't have that kind of time. All you had time to do was move, okay? And spiritual power in that day, it wasn't like you get spiritual power and you could keep it. It only came to you when it was time for you to survive. Okay, so when you were at that last breath, you were at that last moment, right before you're about to get taken, spiritual power would swoop in and save you. The Lord would swoop in and save you. You were saved by the skin of our teeth, as Scripture says. So once we left there, we came into another house. Like I said, it could have been a space of a few months or a space of a few days. I wouldn't know. But after we left there, we came into a house and there was an Israelite there. Not just any Israelite, but it was a servant of the Lord. And he was in there. And he was in there. He had like his house, like this place he was in. It was like a really secluded place, a really well hidden place. And we found it. I guess the Lord guided us there. We found it. And also, what I forgot to mention, when I met the brother in the hallway and we were both floating in the air, he had a garment on. And his garment, is the same garment that he has already. And his garment was drenched in blood, as if he had already killed a bunch of people. I forgot to mention that, Salakia. But once we left from there, we came into another house where there was a servant of the Lord. And he had a garment on as well. And he had fringes and stuff on his garment. And he had other men in there. These men didn't have any garments on. They were just men that he was teaching. So that goes to show you that in this time, there were still men waking up to the truth. All right? These men were standing against the wall and they were listening. They were like, oh, I understand. There were a few men in there. And when we came in there, we came to the guy that was teaching them, and we were like, hey, we need supplies. Is there anything you can hook us up with, anything that could help us, into that time? Because in this time, man, it was just a waiting game. All it was a waiting game. It was a game of survival. You had to survive until YAHAWAH'S came back. And we knew YAHAWAH'S was coming. We knew he was almost there. We just had to survive a bit longer until he got there. So, and it's not like in that time when someone comes to you with weapons and stuff and you're just going to be like, all right, you can have my life. Just take it, man, because I'm going to the Lord anyways. It wasn't like that. It was like in that time, adrenaline overtook you and you just started running. You had no choice but to run and try to escape for your life. So, we came to the guy. We were talking to him. He was like, we were telling him we needed supplies. He said, sure, take what you need. I have supplies over here. He had like cloaks and stuff and weapons and stuff like that. So I went over to I grabbed this sword. It was a beautiful sword. It was really a past sword. It was a black sword and it had silver designs in it and like extra blades on it and stuff. And I was like, wow, this is nice. I couldn't look at it, and get excited like I would now. I would just look at it and say, okay, I'm taking this one. There was no smiles. There was always a straight face. It was always a straight and serious face. I said, okay, I would take this one. And then I put the sword down and I was grabbing this cloak. It was like a blanket. They weren't actual cloaks. They were just blankets. And I had wrapped myself into the blanket. While I was wrapping myself up in the blanket, the servant of the Lord that we ran into, he was talking to one of my brothers. He was like, hey, man. He was talking to brother number one. He was like, hey, you guys should just kick it here with us, man. Help me teach these men, stuff like that. Just, dwell here with us. It feels more comfortable to have more brothers around, da-da-da-da-da. Brother number one was like, no, we can't do that. Salakia, the water, for the, the hospitality and stuff like that. But we can't do that. And, because, in that time, you don't want to be, you want to keep your circle small. And that day, you don't want to be running down the street from the cops with 50 people, okay? People are bound to die. People are bound to die in that day. All right? So it's like, he was telling him, no, we got to keep moving. We can't stay still. We can't stay here. We have to keep moving always. He was like, all right, I understand. But I grabbed the cloak and the sword. One of the new brothers ended up picking up my sword. I was like, hey, give me that back. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Here you go. They had deep respect for us. People had deep respect for us, like we were celebrities or really famous men. Okay, because people sought us for prophecies, for guidance and to hear the times that we're in and the times that we're coming into. But at the same time, people sought us to kill us. People sought us to betray us. We had people that were with us that betrayed us. When they got caught, they gave up our location, they gave up our spot. That's why we had to keep moving, because people would see us and they would say, oh, they're over here. Oh, they're over there, So we had to keep moving always. But that was basically the end of that dream. It was a serious time. The point of the dream, it was a serious time to come into. There was no happiness therein. You couldn't lust over a woman. You couldn't lust over food, because like I said, with the woman that was standing at the door, the guy was standing behind her, you know, laying up a trap for us. The woman was saying to us, she was saying, you can come in here, I have shelter, I have food. You can come here to me, I have shelter and food, and stuff like that for you. You know, the flesh would say, oh shit, let's go, you know, we're gonna be taken care of, we're gonna be good. But we were circumspect. We were observing her every move. We were observing everything around her. We weren't gonna go in there either way she sliced it, even if she had a man in there, or even if she didn't have a man in there. Because we were so circumspect, we couldn't trust anyone. We just couldn't trust anything. We questioned everything that came our way. And at every corner, at every turn was death. Death was waiting for you. All right, death was chasing you throughout the streets, and you had to escape. Okay, we barely made it. But that was, you know, right when we left from the guy's house, where I got the sword from and the blanket from to cover myself up in. Right when we left from there, I had woke up and I was like, oh my goodness, we gotta do a class on this, man. But hey, Scripture says, wisdom and knowledge to be the stability of thy times, man. That's the times you're gonna have to dwell in. Okay, it's better to be in the house of mourning than the house of feasting. And that day was nothing but mourning, right? So we got to get your spirit used to these kind of things. Get your spirit used to fasting, you know. Get your spirit used to things like that, you know, weaning yourself off from that kind of stuff. Because the flesh is always gonna, you know, come for you. It's always gonna try to take you down, and you can't let it. And that time, it was a lot harder. It was a lot harder for the flesh to, you know, it was a lot harder to dwell in the spirit. It's a lot, because the flesh craved so much. But your spirit, the men of the Lord, their spirits were so afflicted, you know, that they couldn't crave anything. They really couldn't crave. You know, it was hard to eat. We were looking at that food there on the table, man. We were like, nah, I'm good. All right, even though we hadn't eaten in days, our minds there was so much on our minds. You know, our minds were running like freaking motorcycles. You know, we couldn't eat. It's not that we just didn't, you know, it's not just that we didn't want to eat, but we couldn't eat. We couldn't stomach it. We'd probably throw it up from all the shit that we've seen. But that's the spirit that the Lord's going to put on these men in these days, man. This is going to be the worst time we're ever coming into. The worst time that there will ever be. I just wanted to bring that out so that this would help brothers in the faith. This will help brothers understand the thing that the times we're coming into is a serious time. It's not a laughing matter. Okay, it's good. Okay, it's good to rejoice now, because hey, we know that the time is nigh and the time is almost up. But in that day, it's not going to be so sweet, because it's going to be a constant affliction, day in and day out, no rest. You're going to sleep for a few hours, maybe a few minutes. You're going to get up and you're going to have to move. You have to keep moving, because they're hunting us down for sport. And a lot of brothers had died from being hunted down. The scripture says they will persecute thee. So those are the kind of things we got to be prepared for. So prepare your minds. Always got to prepare your minds. With that, I want to say, call Allah, YAHAWAH'S, Shai, Bashar, Makakadash. Hope this was edifying to you, hopeful like men, and you servants of the Lord out there. Until next time, Israel, Shalom.